steady thunder shower was falling this morning as friends and family of Roger Wheeler crowded into Tulsa's First Presbyterian Church. The press was not allowed inside for the funeral service. Wheeler was well liked, and hundreds of people were on hand to pay their last respects to the self-made millionaire. A staunch supporter of First Presbyterian, pallbearers carried Wheeler's body from the church one last time. Despite the drizzle, mourners lined up for the 20-minute drive to the cemetery. After the funeral service, Wheeler's body was brought here to Tulsa's Memorial Park for burial. The rain kept the graveside service short, and while the mourners wept, across town, the 11-man special Tulsa Police Task Force continued its search for Wheeler's killer. Detectives are concentrating their investigation in two areas. 4 men are trying to track down the suspect's getaway car. Others are trying to narrow down the killer's motive.
We're working on 3 premises, as the evidence would indicate. It was one of 3 things. It was a professional business contract, or it was an attempted armed robbery that was aborted, or it was an attempted kidnap for extortion that was aborted.
Sergeant Hunt refused to be specific, but he did say the task force is following up on a number of promising leads. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Tulsa.
Rodney, 25, get 10, 30, 30, 39, 35, 5, you go 35, 45, 35, now 40. 35.
This was one of 2 police auctions held each year to sell unclaimed property. Potential buyers checked a list of hundreds of items going for a few dollars to hundreds of dollars.
Roger, now 55, 40, 40, 40. Now 45, 5, you go 45, you go 45, 50, 50. Oh, we got it right here. Now 7.5. Oh, we got it right here.
Now, some of the things on the auction block might have seemed a bit odd and unusable, but nevertheless, they were sold in a matter of minutes. These auctions are held every 6 or 7 months to make room for more things that will be recovered by police, but not claimed by the rightful owners.
$60 bid now, 65, 5, 5. You go 5, you bid 5, 5, 65, 5. Sold it, $60, Floyd, you're right.
However, there were some items that could be put to good use as soon as the buyer walked out the door. The crowd of 800 or so really got their pick of bicycles and used guns, all of which were rifles. Some of the rifles may have only been used once before confiscated. It was understood from the beginning that this was strictly a cash and carry auction. Police think that when the auction ended, there was anywhere from an extra $8,000 to $12,000 in the cash box. Ed Stewart, Action 4 at the Myriad.
When Rich Lindsay comes home, he enters a doorway into history, the history of the wars of the 20th century.
Well, I don't remember when I haven't been interested in it, and it kind of snowballed into 50 or 60 complete uniforms, 2,000 patches, all kinds of headgear. But like anything else, once you start collecting, there's just really no cutoff point.
This jacket was worn by the famous Flying Tigers. It's the only piece that Lindsay says he will never trade. Many of his pieces come from older people who remember their days in the military.
I've had people that just have literally walked up to me, and they would just come up and they'd hand me something, and they'd say, "Take this, I want you to have it." And generally they were older people. They had been in the war, or they were the wives of somebody who had been in the war and they were dead now, but they didn't have the heart to throw it away. And they said, "I want you to have this."
But these artifacts represent more than mere mementos.
It pays honor to the past. You have to have something of value to base your life on. The dress sword. You have to have something that you can anchor yourself to.
For Rich Lindsay, that anchor is the history of the United States military, a history that he says is rich in tradition and honor. Bill Ross, Action 4 in Del City.
This is now the world's largest land drilling rig. It stands 200 feet tall. Parker Drilling Company of Oklahoma spent an estimated $12 million to build this massive structure for the GHK Corporation of Oklahoma City. It will be moved to the Elk City area. This rig is capable of drilling 50,000 feet for natural gas. That's why Energy Secretary James Edwards was the featured speaker at this dedication ceremony for the rig. He also held a news conference at the Dell City construction site.
My feeling is that when these great big rigs like we're dedicating here today get down there and start drilling that deep in the ground, we don't know what we're going to find. But my impression is, from those people that are out there on the front line drilling those holes in the ground, my impression is there's a lot more gas out there.
Edwards also told reporters that the Reagan administration cannot take all the credit for oil deregulation, but he said they certainly accelerated the move.
We have more drilling rigs out in the field than ever in the history of this country. Just a little under 4,000 out there drilling holes in the ground, looking for new oil and gas sources, and it has stimulated the industry to go out and search for new gas and oil, and that's what it's going to take.
The Energy Secretary added that the oil situation today is a splendid example of what happens when we let the free market work. Ben McCain, Action 4, Dell City.
Suffered hail damage. You probably took one look at it yesterday and said to yourself that it would never be the same. Well, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Even if the broken glass and dents are as bad as this car, it was parked in the Channel 4 lot at the wrong time. Not all cars were battered as badly as this one, but the damage is basically the same. John Puckett wrote up at least 15 estimates today. He says the major damage is to the top surfaces, which can be replaced. Glancing blows put dings in the sides, and those have to be handled differently.
What we'll have to do here on these moldings is replace all of them that's been damaged and order them from the factory. These here are not damaged as bad as your roof, your deck lid, and your top panel. So we'll apply heat to them, bring them out, which will shrink the metal, buff it down, and you'll get a good smooth job. Okay, the top is way too bad to try to straighten. It's just got solid ripples all the way through it. So what we're going to have to do is to take a metal cutter and cut it right in through this seam here, order a new top from the factory, which will take probably about 2 weeks.
2 weeks may seem like a long time, and the job is expensive. The estimate on this one is around $2,500. A high price to pay for a few seconds of rainy nice. The real rub is that as soon as this car gets out of the shop, it could easily happen again. Ted Brown, Action 4.
Frank Hanna loves to grow vegetables in his backyard garden. But it's only a matter of time before the water supply to Frank Hanna's garden will be cut in half. Frank lives in Norman, and city leaders here are anticipating a hot, dry summer. Like many Oklahoma towns, water was rationed here last year. Frank's lawn and garden were burnt out. He doesn't want to see that happen again. With last year's summer in the back of their minds, Norman City voters approved a $10 million bond issue to improve the city's water supply system. As a result, the water treatment plant will double its output, and the city will build a 6.5 million gallon Clearwater well reservoir. All will be completed by 1983. But what about this year?
Approximately a week ago, we were running on a few days around 8.5 to almost 9 million gallons per day, but now that this weekend that's dropped down to 6.5 million. So the cooler weather and some of the rains have definitely had an impact. But how long that will last is quite unknown.
There may be some short-term help for Norman on the horizon. The City Council is considering whether or not to drill 3 new water wells. Now, those wells would be drilled this summer. The only problem is they won't be ready until next summer. Mark O'Neill, Action 4 in Norman.
he turns around. Well, he backed up to the corner there, and he was going to turn around and go, and we seen the end of the caboose, and he turned back around, and he came up here. But one train was going this way, and he just got clear, and he pulls up on the track when the rear end cleared, and another one just came right on just like that and just wasted him.
Despite the recent rains, additional moisture is needed for the state's water supplies. During the month of May, 20 Oklahoma communities rationed water. Rationing in some northeastern and southwestern Oklahoma communities will continue unless there is additional rainfall. And even then, rationing is possible, according to Jim Shoeline with the Water Resources Board.
Last summer, the problems that we experienced were due to treatment and distribution facilities. Many Oklahoma communities now are faced with inadequate distribution and treatment facilities, and if we do anticipate, or if we experience another really hot, dry summer like last year, we can expect a number of communities to be rationing.
The level of water at Lake Liberty is still low, but the city of Guthrie has drilled additional water wells to supplement its water supply this summer. Now, some small communities like Guthrie just don't have the money to improve their water systems. And Shoeline says those are the communities that will have problems this summer. Ben McCain, Action 4, at Lake Liberty near Guthrie.
And raise it.
Here we go.
This is a great recipe for the whole family, but goes over very well for company too.
The man who was chairman didn't pay.
I was complaining about the tablespoon of salt you said. Tablespoon.
Ever since the Wright brothers flew their first plane from Kitty Hawk, airplanes have been getting bigger, faster, more complex, and more expensive. But we found some people in central Oklahoma who don't follow that philosophy. You might call them the new aviation pioneers. Bob Weiss is one of those pioneers. The planes he flies are called Ultralights, or powered hang gliders. Now, you don't climb into an ultralight like you would a conventional plane. Instead, you strap it on. Weiss says the tiny planes have become popular in central Oklahoma since there aren't many mountains around here from which to launch a conventional hang glider. A noisy little 20-horsepower snowmobile engine supplies the needed power to push the ultralight around. The planes are supposed to be foot-launchable and landable, but most of the modern designs use normal aircraft-type landing gear.
It's a lot of fun to fly one around about 400 or 500 feet above the ground, and you can watch people walking along the road or anything. It's really a lot of fun to do that. It's a real free feeling to get up and fly one around. It's somewhat like a hang glider, except a hang glider, of course, you don't have the engine to try a landing again if you don't make it the first time or something.
Most birds prefer to travel in flocks. Ultralights are no different. When you see one, you may notice another nearby. Perhaps if Orville and Wilbur were around today, they'd have their own ultralights. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Shawnee.
Railroads need to know how much grain is going to be produced and where it's going to be produced if they're going to set up their grain cars to haul the crop. The legislatures need to know agricultural production so that they can pass reasonable laws. The grain trade is dealing all the time, and the farmers themselves are watching and trying to market their product in a profitable fashion. And with this buyer and seller market, they need accurate, reliable information, and that's our job.
A viewer writes in and says, I had my car when I got married. The title was in my name. When I married, I transferred the title into my husband's name. Now I'm considering a divorce and my husband says he might take the car away from me. Is there any way I can prevent this? Well, in Oklahoma, the motor vehicle title document is not in and of itself full proof of ownership. The court reserves for itself the right to determine who the true owner of the car is. Therefore, if a divorce does occur, you should present proof that you had purchased the car prior to the marriage and voluntarily transferred title to your husband. Generally, property possessed prior to a marriage will be returned to the original owner, and the court has complete authority to do so regardless of what is indicated on the title. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.
His foreman apparently told him not to get in there and if he smelled crude oil or gas, and he didn't think apparently that it smelled that bad, and he got down in there, and when he did, I imagine all it took was a spark.
At this moment, State Health Department officials are inside the Dayton plant investigating the spill. However, we can't show you the location of the spill because this is as close as plant officials would let us go. According to health officials, an electrical transformer being moved to another part of the plant leaked the chemical onto an asphalt road. Plant management says it was cleaned up immediately and employees were never in any danger. PCB was used in electrical transformers as insulation, but was banned in 1978 because of suspicions that it caused cancer. Was anybody in any danger out there?
To my knowledge, no. There's been no reports of any kind of any employee exposure. As far as we know, there's no danger, public health risk of any kind right now. I do have a man out there right now looking at the problem. I haven't heard from him yet. I feel certain if there was a big problem, he would have notified me by now.
Transformers that contain PCB and were already in use before the '78 ban are not illegal. However, if Dayton had been repairing the transformer and then putting it back into service without first removing the chemical, they could, according to Hench, be in violation of federal law. Ted Brown, Action 4.
I'm certainly not all that upset at Dan Draper. I'm upset at the system, and we've got a system here where 101 elected representatives comes up here, and we're asked to rubber stamp what 3 or 4 decide. That's the issue at stake here, is whether we're going to spend the money like drunk sailors, or whether we're going to try to set aside a little bit of it for a rainy day when we may not have so much growth.
Advice. I need to know what does she, for instance, want to stay? She got a graduate degree and could add class. If you went through her house, these are someone you can go to and explain the situation to. You come to the shelter.
There are welfare agencies. There is legal aid. There are volunteers from the medical profession that will attend to their physical bruises and injuries. And the police are very cooperative, but their hands are tied because we do not have proper legislation.
This morning, House Republicans met behind closed doors to talk about their demands, more representation on House committees, and an effort to take the sales tax off prescription drugs. Dissent Democrat Charlie Morgan even showed up at the meeting, and although the press was barred, it was evident from the body language inside, serious negotiations were underway. They met up to the last minute. In fact, it looked like they were boycotting the session. The seats on the right side of the House, normally reserved for Republicans, were empty. Even when Republicans came back to the chambers, most of them were out of their seats negotiating and making deals. The two principal players were House Speaker Dan Draper and Republican leader Neil McCaleb. While observers were expecting fireworks, it all fizzled in the form of a compromise. Republicans will get more representation on committees, and they will get to vote to take the sales tax off prescription drugs.
And I look forward to having a much better working relationship with the members of the minority party, and I think the House will be better off by virtue of more cooperation and more working together between all of us who are interested in the best interests of this state.
We think the interests of the people of this state are well served by this compromise, and I want to express my personal appreciation to Speaker Draper for the effort that's been put forth to reach this compromise in the last few days, and especially the last few hours this morning.
It could be sent back to the Court of Appeals to further decide something. If it were sent back to the trial court, then the judge could either set the case for trial, or he could allow further discovery, which literally means what it sounds like, trying to discover evidence, and then set the case for trial. Now, if he set discovery, then there would be a possibility the case might be resolved by a summary judgment in favor of the defendants. In other words, they might win without having to go to trial. So the Supreme Court's got a lot of different options available to it to do something, and it's difficult at this early stage to predict what they might do, because we haven't even got the court to take jurisdiction yet, much less win in an opinion.
Hello, Bill. To Joplin? Yeah, we can go in about 30 minutes.
Bruce Huddleston runs a thriving air charter service at Ada Municipal Airport. His planes carry passengers all over the Southwest. His schedule board is usually chocked full of flights. And incredible as it might sound, he's never had a passenger complain about a bumpy trip.
Okay, bye-bye.
After the arrangements are complete, it's time to go out to the flight line to greet the passengers. Huddleston's Charter is one of the most successful air hearse operations in the country. It's long been an American tradition to bring the body back. Charter specializes in bringing them back quickly.
For one thing, it saves them time. You can't cover the same amount of ground in a given period of time in a hearse that you can in an airplane. And we are cheaper if you consider all the variables, the insurance and the wear and tear on the vehicle. So it's basically a time saver.
Right now, the flying hearses average about 35 trips a month. The company must turn down another 15 charters because of a lack of equipment. So Huddleston may have to buy some more planes soon to keep up with the demand. In today's mobile society, it's a safe bet his business will take off as people continue to die far away from loved ones. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Ada.
Today's question is, does the law that allows you to turn right on a red light after coming to a stop also allow you to turn left onto a one-way street? Yes, that law found in Title 47, the Motor Vehicle Code, allows traffic facing any steady red light to enter an intersection and turn right, or turn left onto a one-way street after making an initial stop. To do so, you must yield the right-of-way to all pedestrians within the crosswalk and to other traffic. And the law states that such turns are allowed unless the city puts up a clear and concise sign telling drivers they are specifically prohibited at that intersection. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.